Dion, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. The EU has given the deal, the draft deal, the stamp of approval, but there's still talk that MPs in the UK are not buying it. Why?
Well, Sharon, I think if you go and analyse the reasons, frankly, it doesn't really appease anyone on either side. Theresa May is putting on a brave face, and she's suggesting in all her pronouncements that this is a good deal for the British public, and this is what they voted for. But from both sides, she's getting opposition and saying that it's not. From the Remain side, people are saying that this is much worse than actually being part of the EU for all sorts of reasons, but mostly particularly economically speaking and from a business point of view. And then from the Leave side, they're saying this is not what we voted for either, because we wanted to leave. We didn't want to be subject to EU rules and EU legislation and the European Court of Justice. So frankly, it's the worst of all worlds in many ways if you look at it from a political point of view. So I think she's got an uphill battle to get this through a parliament on the 11th of December.
So what happens if Theresa May actually loses that December 11 vote?
Well, I think we'll be in for all sorts of fun in the UK. I think if she loses it, I doubt that she will be the Prime Minister for any period after that. I think that will be the end of Theresa May. And then whoever takes over from her, the question is, what next? You know, do we have a general election? Do we have another referendum? There's all sorts of scenarios that are in play after that, but I think it will be a period of tremendous excitement and upheaval.
Yeah, and then, of course, the consequences if Britain actually leaves the EU without a deal. What's that going to look like?
That's bad for pretty much everyone. Now, the hard Brexiteers are not fearful of that. They're saying, effectively, that is what we voted for. They are saying that we don't want to be subject to the EU rules, and we are happy to take the consequences, that we will negotiate new trade deals, etc., that we'll take short-term pain for longer-term gain. From a more pragmatic sort of business point of view, a lot of people are saying, you know, that's going to be too painful, and that's definitely not in the best interests of the British people when it comes to jobs and the like. As an investment professional, I'm probably more on the side of the latter argument. But I also have good friends in the industry that are well informed that take the opposite view. So it's very much a vectored question.
Yeah. What about delaying Brexit? Is that an option at all?
Well, yes, effectively. If you look at the deal on the table, you can argue that it is indeed delaying Brexit because, you know, we've got this deal on the table which is a little bit of a mishmash, where essentially the UK is likely to stay within the customs union as well as the single market. As long as we take to solve the Irish question. So effectively, you know, we could be part of the EU for all intents and purposes for another 4 years until the end of 2022, and even beyond, on the assumption that Ireland can't be solved. And that, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, is the big question, is how do you solve this question, which is Ireland? I think it is a very, very difficult issue.
So you mentioned that there could be another referendum if Theresa May actually resigns, if you know, her UK Parliament doesn't go with this deal. What's the sentiment from people, given that they've seen how difficult it has been? Do you think they'll change their mind on actually leaving the EU?
Well, let me divide that into two parts. I think in the first instance, I think the likelihood today of actually obtaining the second referendum is still a small likelihood. I'm not suggesting that this is the likely outcome. If you were to put a probability on it, it's much less than 50%. It may be 10%, which is, you know, it's not the likely outcome. And you just need to look at all the sort of political pronouncements that Theresa May herself and a number of other people have said in this regard. However, if there were to be this other referendum, even though it's unlikely, for all intents and purposes, but if there were another referendum, my view is that I think in all likelihood people will vote to remain now, and that is supported by polls that one reads about in the newspapers and the like. So, you know, I think people have a lot of Brexit fatigue now. I think people have a lot of information now that they did not have 2.5 years ago when they had the original referendum. So I think if there was another referendum, I think it's quite likely that the Remain vote will prevail. But whether or not we will have that referendum, as I say, that's still a small likelihood at this point in time.
Yeah, that's long term. So let's talk about what's happening now. There's so much uncertainty. We know that the EU approved the draft deal. We know that opposition MPs are dead set against it. Given all of this being up in the air so much, how is it actually affecting markets there?
Well, markets are uncertain, and markets, frankly, have been uncertain for most of the last 2.5 years. I always look just at the main exchange rate, the so-called cable, which is the British pound against the US dollar. And when I last looked at it, it was around the 128 mark. It's been slightly below that for some of the day. And it's been hovering at that level between about 127, 128, up to about 131, frankly, for most of the last year or more. So it's been within a relatively tight trading range for quite a long time. And I think that's just a reflection of the fact that the market simply does not know. I think if we do get clarity of either a good deal, which at this point in time is not on the table, or a go back to a remain option, I think from a market's point of view, the pound will recover very quickly, and it will be good for markets as well. So markets are tremendously uncertain. A lot of people are placing bets on this. And time will tell. I think it's a bit of a lottery, frankly. Markets are battling to know how to deal with this, and you can see it in the relatively tight trading rate of the pound.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your insight. We appreciate it. That was Dion Gous, Chief Investment Officer at Credo Wealth, joining us from London.